Amanda, you have said before that gender advocacy is challenging work. It's not easy because of the long-held attitudes that we've just talked um, uh, about gender roles, and that you need to go against the status quo. But my question is, how do you do that? How does somebody go against the status quo? Where do they get the courage to stand up for doing the right thing?
Um, yes, it's hard. And then you're challenging ideas, practices that has existed over time and that has been accepted and become a part of the society that you're in. But also within the same context is the fact that people know what you're doing is wrong. And sometimes they just need people to be able to raise their consciousness around the impact of what they're doing and how the implications of their actions. So as an activist, what I have come to realize is understanding the context within which you're operating, knowing your context and understanding and having counter messages. So culturally, in as much as there are negative stereotypical discourses and practices that leads to gender-based violence or gender inequality, there are equally positive languages, discourses that promote gender equality. So understanding and knowing your context and where these counter narratives are, and engaging these counter narratives in your discussions and letting them understand that whilst you have heard this, there is this other language. Do you know about it? Because sometimes people do not really know that, okay, what you're doing and then is wrong, or they know and then they feel like that is all the option they have. They don't have the alternative languages to say this is wrong. So you raise their awareness around that. This is how you can engage this language, and also being able to trace historical narratives around gender equality. Mostly the resistance with gender equality as a concept, as a practice, is the fact that it's seen as a Western importation. But over the if you go into some of these spaces and tell them, well, this is not new. We have typical examples. Then you raise women that have led resistance regimes, women that have stood up and corrected wrong narratives. Then they understand that, okay. Another approach that is also useful is relating it to their personal lives. You think women do not require equality. How about your mother? How about your sister? How about your daughter? As soon as you raise that level, they know what they want and what is right for their children and their family members. So they get to understand and it's appreciated. But not everyone accepts it because then it challenges, it requires them to give up certain power, control that they have gained over the years through that. So it's a bit hard. But then one thing I've realized to be effective is speaking their language and letting them understand that you know the context within which they are operating. And these are the alternatives that are available. So this is how we can engage them. It's also been a bit effective when you engage other males as allies to be able to communicate your activism and all that. And the fact that what you're doing is not hatred for men and that equality does not also benefit only women. It is important for men as well. How those who have partners that contribute to the home many years ago, our mothers were kept at home. They couldn't contribute effectively. That's how you realize that there's a generation even where men understand that their mothers stood up when their fathers were not ready to take them to school. So you raise some of these issues and it becomes easy. This is how you're engaged and you're able to maneuver the space and how it plays out, especially appealing to the consciousness of these men who are in power and also who are perpetrating some of these abuses.
Yeah. Good. Very interesting. Some of your current research is about climate change and masculinities. Please tell us a bit more about this.
Yeah, so I got to theoretically and conceptually, I look at how gender socialization has implication for development and then the enhancement of society, and also how we engage the narratives around women and men and where their position has implications as well for how development projects go. And climate change has basically looked at development of societies, individual, the national context, and global as well. What I observed is that mostly when we are talking about gender equality in climate change, we look at women and how it impacts. But as a gender activist, as also a student of gender studies, what I know is that if you're addressing issues of inequality and it's one-sided and lopsided, it has implications, especially when it targets women as against men. It has a ripple effect where men resist and stand and fight back. So this narrative around climate change positions men as resource owners largely, and being the perpetrators or the catalyst of climate change because of their access to resources, owners of lands and all that. But we've realized that when you're addressing women's issue, one of the backlash that you get, especially from men, is they tend to use abuse. So my interest in climate change is to look at how we position men, the discourses, how the neglect of their experiences, especially alternate masculinities. Men are also not the same, actually. So there are different kinds of men. They are resource owners, they are vulnerable ones. And there's something called masculine capital. If men feel threatened, they use abuse. So if you address women's issues and empower them, and then you, to the neglect of these men, they will fight back and they use abuse. So how do we interrogate where men are positioned in the various climate change discourses, address their issues equally as a protective measure for women? As much as you're addressing women's issues, how do you address the issues that men face? So I've looked at this in Climate Masculinities, which we have a paper that we're currently under review. I'm also looking at this in terms of urban heat interaction, where resources are located, adaptation and maladaptation. So while I look at masculinities, my idea is to ensure that it enhances gender equality narratives that are balanced, that as well protects women, as well at the same time addressing men's issues. So this is where my interest and my theoretical and conceptual interrogation comes in, and hopefully we're able to find solutions that will help men and not really make them feel neglected and left behind. Because we also have men that are positively engaging climate change issues. So how do we highlight the positives of these men as well?
Yeah.